You know what makes people turn away from you? What makes them dismiss what you say or feel irritated before you even open your mouth? It's not because you're broken. It's because somewhere along the way, you were trained not to speak. Not really. Or if you did speak, no one heard you. And when you were a kid, your whole sense of what's normal comes from your family. And if your parents made time for your words, responded with interest, helped you form your thoughts, and guided you to speak clearly, then you learned to trust your voice. You learned to say what you mean. But if you had the opposite experience, if you were ignored, interrupted, mocked, corrected all the time, or talked over, you didn't learn that. You learned to be anxious every time you open your mouth. You learn to fear your own self-expression. You learn to live in anticipation of rejection. The anxiety doesn't go away just because you grow up. It becomes part of your wiring. And you start talking really fast. Do you do that? I used to do that. You start filling in every silence, over-explaining, over-justifying, because you're afraid of what might happen if you don't. You might feel like you only have a second to make your point before someone cuts you off. So you rush, you talk louder, and then it comes out weird, right? It makes people tune you out even more. It confirms your worst fears that you're too much. Have you ever been told that? That's what I used to get told. You're too much, Anna. You're thinking way too far ahead. You have so many ideas, slow down for the rest of us. Or they say, you don't understand, your words don't matter. It's not that you're too much. It's that you were never allowed to just be, just to speak calmly, to trust that someone would wait and listen. That's something I do with my younger son. He often says something and stops mid-sentence. This used to happen during the lockdown. We would take a walk every day, and we'd be driving in the car or walking together, and I'd ask him something about his life or his thoughts, and he'd start a sentence, and then it would just hang there. And I'd say, "Go ahead, I'm listening," and I'd wait. And then he would come with the rest of the sentence. And I think it really changed him. He's very articulate, but as a result of the way that he was educated in school, he was very timid about speaking up, and he didn't have a lot of practice putting his thoughts together in words. So now your system is constantly activated. Your nervous system is bracing for rejection. You might hedge everything you say and say things like, well, maybe it's just me, but, or you say, this might sound weird, but, or you're already shrinking before you've even begun. And what do people do when they see someone shrinking like that? They unconsciously follow your lead. They shrink you too. They join you in this idea that you're low status, that you're not worthy of being heard. They stop expecting anything meaningful from you. They don't give you the time or the space to finish. So sometimes you swing the other way. You get loud, you dominate the conversation, you interrupt, not because you're rude, but because the panic of being ignored, it kind of takes over. It feels like life and death to be heard. That's an old childhood feeling. And people feel that urgency coming off of you, so it's stressful for them, and they back away. And then you feel ignored again. And the louder you get, the less you're heard. The more you push, the more people retreat. Now, you might be someone who starts every conversation with, too much intensity. I am. Kind of works on YouTube, but in real life, people find me to be kind of intense. Not just emotionally, but like physically intense. My voice is loud. My words are fast. My gestures can be sharp and wide. So you might exaggerate to make your point. You might start bragging without meaning to, just trying to prove that you're worth listening to. Yeah, that's a really common thing for traumatized people to do. You're not doing this because you're arrogant. You're doing it because deep down, you fear that no one will care unless you overperform, unless you demand their attention. You believe attention must be wrestled from people. And you might notice that in groups, you always feel like you're the one who didn't get a turn. That you were waiting, and suddenly the conversation is over and you missed your chance. You think it's other people not giving you space. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's that you never learned how to step in. Your energy was hanging back. You were trained to wait for permission. And in real life, permission doesn't always come. It's polite, but it's not going to always come. I hear from so many of you that you work on your communication skills. You ask people about themselves. You show an interest in what they're saying, but they never reciprocate. Why, you wonder? A lot of people conclude that everybody's just awful and selfish, and not everybody is. There's something about your vibe, about the way your nervous system is communicating with other people, that gives them permission to ramble on and to not see you. I'm not trying to blame you here. It's something to do with them. It's something to do with you. There's this funny thing that happens when you begin to take yourself seriously and you actually have boundaries and you feel worthy of being heard, that people just don't mess with you. And it's kind of like magic. It's kind of like magic. It just starts to change in ways that you couldn't have predicted or controlled. It comes from inside. So you have to feel your way into a rhythm and speak without apology and claim a place without waiting for an invitation that never arrives. Now, this dynamic doesn't just play out in conversations. It shows up at work, in meetings, in creative settings, in social gatherings, and you might have brilliant insights, important contributions, but when it's your moment, your nervous system freezes up. Or you say something and immediately downplay it as if to erase your own presence. Yeah? You joke, like, well, I was just kidding anyway, right? When it was actually something serious. You dismiss your own ideas before anyone else can. So you're teaching people not to take you seriously. You undercut yourself to stay safe. Now, you might have strong feelings about injustice or boundaries being crossed, but the words come out sideways and they don't have an impact that way. Maybe you sound sarcastic or you blow up unexpectedly, way out of proportion to what just happened. That's emotional dysregulation, a normal sign of childhood trauma in adults, but still something that pushes other people away. Or you fall into frozen silence and you don't say anything at all. And then later you ruminate. So I have this dynamic with my husband. He's more introverted, I'm more extroverted, and sometimes he'll say something and then he pauses for 10 seconds. I promise you, what I believe is that he's done saying what he's saying, and I start saying something, and then he's like, hold on, I'm speaking. So I've had to learn, just kind of like wait and like try a little harder to read the cues. Is he done? Has he said what he wants to say? So that he feels heard rather than interrupted and not cared about. It doesn't feel good, does it? And it doesn't matter if that was your intention. If that's how it's perceived, that's how it's perceived. So we end up making mistakes and we ruminate. And you come up with the perfect thing you should have said, but the moment has passed and you feel defeated again. The pattern can keep you locked in a feedback loop where the need to be heard grows, but the ability to feel heard never arrives. And you start to expect that you'll be misunderstood. And so you communicate in ways that make it even more likely that you will be misunderstood or not heard. You over-explain, you ramble, you rush, you downplay, you repeat, you doubt yourself, you press too hard, or you hold back too much. It's never quite right. It's never quite satisfying. And so you live with the chronic frustration that no one ever gets you. And you might feel deeply isolated in this. I've spent a lot of my life feeling isolated like that. It's so much better now. Even when you're with people, you can feel isolated. Even when you're technically talking, you can feel not heard. The words are happening, but the connection isn't. It's like you're on stage behind a glass wall, acting like a version of yourself, waiting for someone to tap the glass and say, I see you in there, I'm listening. Well, this is what I call a trauma-driven communication style. And it's not about being a bad person. It's a pattern. It's learned. And it's common in people who were never truly listened to as kids. It touches every area of your life. Conversations, relationships, work. The nervous system that braced for neglect is the same one trying to function in meetings, in dating, in family holidays even. You might not even remember the moments it started, but the signs are everywhere. You repeat yourself, not because you're forgetful, but because you don't believe anyone really heard you. So people find you to be kind of repetitive. You raise your voice, not because you're aggressive, but because you think it's the only way to make your words land. So people perceive you as kind of angry. or you lower your voice to sound more credible. Actually, I think that kind of works a little bit. Or you speak in a flat tone, trying not to show emotion because you think you're too emotional. Or you speak in a high-pitched voice that doesn't sound like you at all. I don't know why, but you can actually like lower your register a little bit to sound like you have substance to what you're saying. Hey, I'm jumping in for just a second to tell you that you're invited to take my free daily practice course. It's short, it's easy, it's just 2 techniques that can help you release the harsh thoughts and feelings that swirl around in your mind when something triggers you, so that you can have more clarity, more focus, more ease inside. Doesn't that sound good? I want to show you how to do this. Click the free daily practice link in the second line of the description section below. I'll tell you a secret about me. So I grew up first in California and then in Arizona. And when I was 17, I had these 2 radio internships. And I used to have this little radio show that was aired on Sunday mornings called Tucson Teen on the Air. I was the editor and the talent. But I heard myself on radio and I didn't like my voice. My voice was kind of high, which all of us start with higher voices that sort of gradually lower with age. And so my voice was a lot higher back then. But I also, I did upspeak and I had like a Tucson, Arizona twang to my speech. And Tucson, it sounds a little bit like Texas mixed with LA. So they go, how you doing? Pretty good, pretty good. It's like that. I was like, I don't want that. I want to sound, at the time I thought I want to be like a broadcaster. And I guess in a way I am now, come to think of it. But I consciously worked on having clear diction, brought my register down out of my nose into more of here where I had a more resonant, deep voice. And I worked on losing the twang. And now when I go to Tucson or I'm talking to somebody from Tucson, it comes right back, but it's gone now. And I don't know, maybe that's inauthentic, but I was originally from California and I talk exactly like a person who's from Northern California, from the East Bay Area, Berkeley, Oakland. I have that accent. So anyway, you might find yourself talking way too much when you're nervous or you're freezing and you're not talking at all. You might feel like you have to listen to everyone else and you're not allowed to leave. Do you ever have that? Oh, when you're stuck in a conversation and it's like, and you feel like you can't leave. You know what? You can leave. Even when someone is dominating a conversation and draining you, you might feel like you can't leave. You can leave. It could be rude to get up, but it's rude for what they're doing. You can find a graceful way to get up out of that conversation. You're not responsible to absorb whatever other people want to dump on you. That is a freeze response. It's not weakness, it's survival for our nervous system. And it started when you were small. So you learned that getting away wasn't an option. You behave like a prisoner, crap fitting to what feels like a hostage conversation, right? So your brain made compliance with what other people expect from you feel like you were safe. Now, sometimes when you try to ask for help, it comes out all wrong. I know. You sound angry or accusatory or vague, and people don't know what you want. It's confusing. And that just makes you feel worse. You think, oh, I never should have asked. See, everybody sucks. And you walk away. You end up convinced that no one wants to help you, that you should never have spoken up. But what's really going on is that you never got to practice asking in a healthy way. It wasn't safe back then when you were learning how to socialize with people. So your brain still believes it isn't safe now. Even when logically you know, I can walk away from this conversation. I can go ahead and clear my throat and ask, hey, do I have your attention? Can I tell you something important? It's not unsafe, but your brain thinks it's unsafe. So you don't ask. You hint, and you hope someone will notice. And when they don't, well, what happens? Resentment builds. If someone asks you a clarifying question, like, what do you mean by that? You might feel like they're asking, like, what the hell do you mean by that? You might snap at them, or you shut down because it feels like they're challenging you, like they're trying to prove that you're wrong, even if they're just, trying to understand what you just said. This is what happens when no one ever took the time to understand you when you were small. You get into that pattern. Clarifying questions feel like traps, not invitations. And it felt like they were setting you up, to catch you in a mistake. Do you ever feel like that? So you might feel deeply uncomfortable when there's a silence. You rush to fill it. You think if there's a pause, the other person will lose interest. You talk and talk and talk, even when you're not sure what you're saying anymore, because silence feels like abandonment. It feels like rejection. It feels like the end of connection. And if you have an anxious attachment style, pauses even can feel like someone is just like slam the door in your face and trigger an abandonment wound. Sometimes it's exhausting having trauma wounds, isn't it? But it can get better. So you might be someone who walks away from conversations feeling mortified. You remember every word you said, and you cringe at how you said it, and you think, I was too much. You imagine the other person is rolling their eyes, but in reality, you were just dysregulated. You were speaking through the lens of old pain. You were reacting to a ghost, maybe the memory of what it felt like not to be heard long ago. When someone finally listens to you, like really listens, it can trigger something unexpected. You might feel like crying, or you might blurt out everything you've been holding in. You might overshare, not because you're trying to be dramatic or make them into your therapist, but because the dam finally broke. And it's overwhelming. You feel exposed. You feel seen in a way that brings relief and fear at the same time. You know, sometimes even when people want to listen, you can't handle it. You can't let them. You sabotage it. You make a joke. You change the subject. You dismiss yourself. It's not a big deal. Because receiving attention and care feels foreign. It feels unsafe. And the part of you that learned to be self-protective is still on high alert. This self-sabotage can go unnoticed for years. So you might think you're just awkward or shy or introverted. But what's really happening is that your communication system, which is your nervous system, your beliefs, your self-talk, has been shaped by your survival instinct. And survival communication is different from connected communication. It's different from self-respecting communication. Survival doesn't care if you feel heard. It only cares if you stay safe. None of this is your fault, but it is your responsibility now to make your communication the way you want it to be. Not to blame yourself, but to become conscious, to see the patterns, to understand where those patterns come from. Because if you can see the roots and you can choose a different path, right, then you can change. You can slow down, you can breathe, you can notice when you're talking too fast or too much or not at all, and you can modulate. You can pause and ask yourself, am I speaking from the present moment or from the past or from way inside my head where I'm trying to manage how somebody else perceives me? You can stop hedging, stop apologizing for your words before you even say them. You can speak in clear, short sentences. That's the most likely to get heard. You can let the silence happen. Let it be okay. You can remind yourself that silence is not a threat. It's just space. It's neutral. You hear what I just did? I was speaking in clear, short sentences. So you can start noticing how your body reacts. Do you clench your jaw when you talk? Do you hold your breath? Do you speak through your nose instead of your chest? These are all signs that you're not grounded, that you're not trusting yourself, that you're bracing for rejection. That's the body acting out of the memory of being ignored. And you know what? Maybe that memory is going on. Maybe you are bracing yourself, but sometimes modifying the way that you're speaking, taking it out of your nose, bringing the register down, slowing down, it works backwards to start relaxing you and allowing you to feel calm and like yourself. So you can begin to practice. Say one honest sentence and then stop. Let it land. Watch what happens. Usually, it's not the disaster you feared. Usually nothing bad happens when you say one honest sentence. And that's the start of healing. Each time you speak from a regulated place, you give your nervous system a new experience, a corrective experience. Sometimes people will still not listen. They might interrupt. They might dismiss you. But now you'll recognize it. You'll see that it's them, not you. And you won't get into a spiral. You won't need to prove anything, actually. You can choose to disengage from people like that. You can protect your peace. You can choose where to invest your voice. You can learn to recognize safe people, people who actually want to hear you, people who wait for you to finish, who ask follow-up questions because they care, people who let you pause and gather your thoughts. And when you find those people, you can let them in. You can give yourself the chance to be in a different kind of relationship. You don't have to perform for them. You don't have to entertain them. You just speak. And they listen. And you learn to trust that slowly, bit by bit, until it feels normal, until it feels safe. Hey, it's me, and real fast, if you're watching my videos and wondering if maybe past trauma is having an effect on your life today, I want to share with you a list of signs that what you're struggling with now might be connected with neglect or abuse in childhood. It's good to know this because it can help you know that what's hard for you is normal and that healing is possible. So download my Signs of Childhood PTSD quiz by clicking the top link in the description section below. This is what it looks like to break the cycle. You don't need to fix every conversation. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up as yourself. You need to be present, not polished. Present is better than polished. Maybe I'm an example of that for you. People often say, they like that I seem real. Well, honest, not perfect. Honest and present is so much more valuable to people than polished and perfect. So being steady is important. It's not necessary to be impressive. Because your voice matters, your words matter. Even if no one taught you how to speak, you can still learn and you can still reclaim that part of yourself, the part that knows how to express yourself. Express your true and real self. Like, what could be more important and beautiful for a creature such as you, such as me? We learn how to connect. We learn how to be. You're not too much. And you're not broken. You are a person who wasn't heard, learning how to be heard now. And that journey starts with one moment of truth at a time, one sentence at a time, one pause, one breath. And that's how it starts. And that is how everything can change.